Okay, colleagues, greetings. Hopefully we are live. I'm not sure if the professor is going to join us today. He's been running around. We'll see. Anyway, so there's a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of questions I want to address. I apologize, my energy levels are jumping all around the place. Autumn is not the simplest time. I should actually, I'm super grateful for everybody who's asking questions and making contributions in class, after class. Thankfully, our seminars are still face-to-face and online and offline. But also to everybody who writes online, I feel that I should sit down and write proper responses to everybody, but unfortunately, I don't necessarily always have the time. So it's like, as I've told you, this year I'm going to have 600 students in 5 subjects in 3 departments, which is quite a lot, and offline, face-to-face. And I also have already 600 students enrolled in my Coursera course, Introduction to Political Philosophy, which is, I'm thrilled, exhilarated, but also terrified of this large number. We're going to have regular Q&As for political philosophy. The kind of the big chunk, the offline portion of the Introduction to Political Philosophy is going to begin November 1st. So starting November 1st, we're going to have regular online Q&As for that subject as well. So today, in the course of this live session, we'll see how long it goes. If you want to ask anything in the chat, feel free to do so. Let me just double check if the sound is working. Yeah, okay, so the sound seems to be working. So, first of all, yes, apologies to Nikolai, my wonderful physicist friend from Vienna. So, I should sit down and write a proper response. He was asking about whether Marxists, Marxism, physicalism, naturalism, orthodox Marxists are supposed to be materialists, but you'd be surprised. Maybe it's a local thing. How many Marxists have this maybe quasi-religious interpretation of Marx, humanistic interpretation of Marx, maybe thinking of younger Marx. And it's like, I told you, my scientific advisor, not necessarily the most orthodox Marxist, he specialized in a Derridian reception of Marx, but he certainly did not read Marx in this physicalist reductionist way. In fact, always finding ways of, securing, special space for human agency, maybe even outside of the laws of physics. So again, Nikolai, it's a complicated question. Also, Call Me Shibboleth was asking about, and again, I apologize to Nikolai because I should sit down and write a proper response, but this is because there's no time, too many classes, but maybe I'll get to it at some point. Call Me Shibboleth is asking a very important question about Hegel and religious philosophy, and it's like, this is a deep discussion. This could be like a 1-hour lecture, a separate hour lecture. If you want my treatment of Hegel, it's on Coursera. Obviously, I have this secular interpretation of Hegel, which is inspired by, especially the French reception of Hegel, by Alexander Kojève and philosophers like that. Or in general, like this left Hegelian reading of Hegel and philosophers like Bruno Bauer and Karl Marx. But I want to say, what did Hegel think in his own head? That's a difficult question. How can we know? Hegel lived at a time when it was politically incorrect to not be a Christian. And so he's using religious language and religious metaphors, but to what extent was Hegel an Orthodox Christian? That's a complicated question. But even if Hegel was an Orthodox Christian, so what? This does not prevent us from using the non-Christian insights in his philosophy in a productive fashion. So that's kind of, and sort of, especially when we were talking about Anselm and epiphatic theology, I feel that Hegel is writing after Kant, and Hegel is realizing that all human knowledge is from a particular standpoint. Again, we teach in our University of London course, Modern Political Theory, we teach Hegel as a progenitor of communitarianism. This communitarianism also about language and meaning, right? So it's like all of our concepts in some sense are, again, social and therefore historical, presumably even the concept of God. That is a secular, left Hegelian reading of Hegel. So I'm aware of that. So in many ways, like Foucault, I'm less interested in what Hegel secretly thought in his head and what are the productive ways of using Hegel's ideas. But point taken. And in general, I want to emphasize this, so to speak, pragmatic approach Like, we don't know what is truth with capital T. So instead, and we don't know what's truth about with capital T about a particular person's intentions. So very often, we're looking for an approach which appears useful, productive, let's say productive or coherent. Productive, coherent, right? And I definitely find it not necessarily more coherent, but definitely more productive to view Hegel as a secular philosopher. But again, Shibboleth is exactly right, because like at face value, at the very least, Hegel was a religious philosopher, whatever that means. Okay. What else do I want to talk about? Let me check my notes, because I have like a million notes of things I wanted to talk about. So maybe I should bring this up, because I keep talking about this deeply important and problem to me of, so to speak, Aristotle versus the Buddha, and maybe this should be a moment in the live stream where we take a moment to appreciate the Buddhist insights. Taking a deep breath. We were talking about the Rig Veda in the seminars last Wednesday. We actually had a chance to do a bit of meditation in class. This was, I feel, very good for my own mental health. Hopefully the students appreciated it as well. Anyway, so when I talk about Aristotle versus the Buddha, right? So Aristotle has this notion of human flourishing as developing our rich and varied abilities, right? And in this sense, I feel that Hegel and Marx, let me just write Marx, are on board with an Aristotelian project, right? So like, communism is a more efficient society. It's a society in which human beings have more wants. This is what Marx says. We don't have fewer wants. We have more wants, and we satisfy them even more. Whereas the Buddha, and maybe in this sense Heidegger could go on this side of the board, because this is Heidegger's criticism of Marxist project of communism, because he thinks that there's this technological misunderstanding of being, and potentially communism can be part of that. So is communism a more humane society, or is it a more efficient society, right? And so, but it's like, in an important sense, the Buddhist way, or the Stoic way, or the Cynic way, people like Diogenes, it's the idea like anarcho-primitivism. It's not becoming more efficient, but actually it's a rebellion against natural selection. It's becoming less efficient. And of course, if you rebel against natural selection, you don't reproduce genetically or mimetically, and nobody knows about you, right? And you go extinct. But so it's like, it's a problem, right? So like it seems that the truly ascetic insight can never be communicated, because these people would have to be like, if you maintain noble silence, nobody knows that you are maintaining noble silence, right? I feel that there's an interesting notion there, and like for Buddhism to become widespread, again, this notion of upaya in Buddhism, skillful means, this analogy of father luring children out of a burning house with candy, right? Doesn't Buddhism spread because people misunderstand the core points of the Buddhist doctrine? It's a complicated story. I mean, Buddha himself, presumably, right, according to the story, talks about how the Buddhist philosophy is like, the dharma is like a raft. Once you have crossed over the river, you don't hold on to the raft, you let it go. Once you have, or like a ladder, once you have climbed to where you want to be, you don't hold on to the ladder anymore. So maybe, in this sense, once you have achieved enlightenment, you transcend the Buddhist insights. And it's complicated stories. It's a bit of a sneak peek. These are ideas, like thoughts in progress. Everything, all this is work in progress. I'm sharing these thoughts. Maybe we'll have an occasion to come back to them. Tomorrow, we're supposed to talk about Tao Te Ching. I wonder if we'll have a chance. We're going to have apology in one course, and apology in the morning, and Tao Te Ching in the afternoon. Confucius and Lao Tzu, actually. So we'll see how far we'll go. But so when I talk about Aristotle and the Buddha, it's kind of an interesting question. My wonderful assistant this year, one of the best students who has ever taken my course, and now is an official assistant in the course, Andrei, has asked me this question. Well, it's like, he didn't exactly ask this question, but our conversation after class led in this direction. Like, when the university approached me and told me that I could do a Coursera course, have I thought, economists talk about expected utility. Have I thought about expected utility? I mean, I consider myself a utilitarian, broadly speaking, like a Marxist, Nietzschean utilitarian. Reading Nietzsche through Mill and Marx, and Marx through Mill and Nietzsche, right? So I consider myself a Marxist, Nietzschean utilitarian. Have I considered my own well-being when I agreed to teach Coursera? And I had this experience. Maybe I'll record a separate video about this. And I should talk about meditation because it's so important in so many ways. But I've spent about a year devoted almost completely to yoga and meditation. And it was definitely, in terms of what Daniel Kahneman calls experienced utility, it was definitely the happiest year of my life. Without a doubt, it was the happiest year of my life. And the question is, it's like, why did I choose to, so to speak, stop that, right? And it's not, it's not entirely clear to me. Why exactly have I made this choice? And has this choice, made me happier? And specifically, when I was, talking about Coursera, recording Coursera, right? It's like the thought never even crossed my mind whether this is going to make me happier or not. The thought never even crossed my mind. And in fact, as a matter of fact, it's like I was, what's the right phrase? I don't want to say depressed, but I was very anxious about recording Coursera. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. I felt a lot of guilt and passionate drive to do Coursera as best I can. And I've also drank a lot of caffeine. I usually try to abstain from caffeine for all sorts of reasons, partly for reasons of sort of maintaining meditative and calm attitude to life. But I've drank much more caffeine while I was recording Coursera than I usually do, right? And so, and it's like, in fact, I was having my COVID shots as I was recording Coursera. So I've also had to take a lot of painkillers because I've had side effects after the shots. And so it's like this does not sound as something that makes people happy. It's like, did it, especially in terms of experience utility, like, why do I do this? Is this some kind of guilt complex? Like, it doesn't make me happy, but it makes me worthy of happiness. I don't know. It's difficult question. Like, analyzing myself. No, I definitely feel it's a worthwhile enterprise. I felt obliged to do Coursera. I felt honored that I have the privilege of doing Coursera. But it's like, at the end of the day, you understand. It's like it's an interesting issue. It's a complicated question. Let's take a pause and maybe invite the professor into the picture, because the professor wants to say hi. I promised that the professor is going to join us at least for a little bit. Professor, how are you? It's getting cold, so the professor doesn't like that I have to keep the doors closed because of the wind. Anyway. So, it's a big question. Again, as I keep mentioning, it's always a dilemma for me at the end of August. Like, why do I want to let go of the meditation I do during the summer and engage in this sort of passionate pursuit of teaching in September? Maybe something I could change around about that. Of course, I'm talking about August and previous years, not this year, because this year all of my summer was spent doing Coursera. Anyway, which again, people are more than welcome to join. And again, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in this stream or in the previous face-to-face conversation. Again, I'm thrilled, excited, but also terrified. 600 people joining Coursera. And again, it's like we're gonna be doing live Q&As. I mean, if you have questions right now, feel free to ask them. But in general, we're going to be doing live Q&As starting November 1st. We'll see if I can arrange something before that. But starting November 1st, approximately, definitely going to need to schedule live Q&As from time to time. Okay. Yeah, there's another question sometimes pops into my head. It's like, why do I speak so fast? Especially sometimes when I record myself. And I kind of, I get this strange thought that, again, it's like I've spent past 3 years approximately preparing for Coursera. Like, everything was devoted to that. almost I would say yeah. Every waking moment of my life, every waking day, I certainly was aware that I had to do Coursera. And most of my professional activities revolved around that. So there are a lot of topics which I wanted to cover, and there's this YouTube channel which I wanted to start but didn't really get going because my time was spent preparing for Coursera. And it's like I feel that I have these insights, well, that I want to share with the world. I'm not sure if they are the most enlightening or the most insightful insights, but something like that. Another thing I want to mention in response to some of the comments, and this has to do again with this productive approach and not seeking truth with capital T. It's like very often I hear students talking about, again, this in terms of people being right or wrong. Like, is Aristotle right or is Aristotle wrong? Is Leibniz right or is Leibniz wrong? Or like, does God exist or does God not exist? You see, and there's this wonderful Greek word, epoche, which goes back to Sextus Empiricus, right? It's the idea of suspension of judgment, of trying to hang out in like in the middle between sort of jumping to, like, resisting the temptation of jumping to conclusions. So not right and wrong, but sort of like keep complexity in mind. Resist the temptation to jump to conclusions. Resist the, like, it's a difficult balance. And I'm kind of sort of walking around this, but it's like for example, when I think about interpretations of quantum mechanics, I have my favorite interpretation. I have interpretations which I find like more coherent, more productive, more useful, more interesting. But at the end of the day, it's not like I feel like it's not like there's one right interpretation or something like that. Again, it's like I'm not sure if the word agnostic is the right word, because agnosticism also has this slightly judgmental connotations. But it's like I want to hang out in the middle. It is a difficult position to occupy. Sort of, there's always this tendency, this temptation to collapse into one side of the argument or the other side of the argument, and hanging out in the middle takes a conscious effort. It takes a conscious effort to sort of stay in the middle and not to collapse into sort of one extreme or the other extreme. And in an important respect, like I genuinely think that we don't know what is at bottom of reality, and I feel that that's a very productive way to approach things. But amazingly, and again, like this is the internet is famous for this. Like people on Twitter or people like in YouTube comments, like never do this. It's like people come to your YouTube channel, whatever, right? And they write a comment as if they're slapping you in the face, like, you are wrong. Or they're saying, yes, you are right. And it's like, it's like, I feel that doing philosophy in very many ways is about this ability to resist temptation to jump to conclusions. In fact, I always keep wanting to talk about my 3 rules of method, even though I have a separate video about this, maybe, where I talk about this in slightly more terms. But let me say it. So fallibilism, skepticism, and empiricism. These are my 3 approximate rules of method. And so this skepticism is precisely this. So resist the temptation to jump to conclusions. No, let's say this is fallibilism. So fallibilism is understanding that you can be wrong, knowledge is only hypothetical, resist the temptation to jump to conclusions. Skepticism is the willingness to question what any sane person takes for granted. And it's also a difficult thing to do. And empiricism is again pay attention to the way things present themselves. Pay attention to the way things appear, to the way, like, let's say, appearances present themselves. More to be said about this. Anyway, I'm looking at what's happening with the YouTube feed. I feel that there's actually a technical problem. So you know what? Let me pause here. So anyway, colleagues, I was planning to talk about something else as well, but again, for technical reasons, I'm going to have to stop. So maybe if I manage to figure out what's wrong, I will restart this live stream. Otherwise, colleagues, I hope this was at least somewhat useful, answered some of your questions, and until next time, stay safe and take care.